Here for PHLY, I am Fran Duffy, here to share my thoughts after going through the film of the Eagles' win over the Cleveland Browns in Week 6 at Lincoln Financial Field. And we'll start on the offensive side of the football, and I'll start positive because obviously there were some big plays in the return for A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith. Both players out in the last game that the Eagles played in Week 4 down in Tampa. They return, and we see big plays, touchdowns to both number 11 and number 6. I'll go into my breakdowns, all those plays, but I thought that both were well orchestrated, well executed, nice schemed up plays to get those guys touches. Obviously, AJ, a lot of the work that he did in this game was down the field, and we saw that on that slot fade touchdown in the second half. And then DeVonta Smith, we saw him on that shallow cross, that mesh concept to get open against man-to-man coverage. That was a play that Jalen Hurts actually called at the line of scrimmage. You could see him audibling on the TV broadcast, changed the play based off what he saw pre-snap. DeVonta Smith breaks open. Really good execution from Jack Stoll on that play as well. So I'll get into all of that in my breakdown of my piece over at allphly.com. So DeVonta Smith, A.J. Brown, big parts of the offense, but still a very up and down game, certainly from the passing game, the run game as well, which I'll get into. But that's point number 2 for me. Just the structure of this offense. Is it something that is sustainable for this team moving forward? And it's going to be, honestly, if this is the way that the offense is going to look, I would expect that it's going to be a little bit of a roller coaster ride. It's almost like a baseball team that's going to lean heavily into hitting home runs. When they're hot, they're hot. And when they're not, they're not. And that's just going to be the volatility of this pass game right now. I think in this game, you saw a little bit of that. We saw a lot of deep balls down the field early, and that led to Jalen Hurts being 0 for 5 to start this football game. We started to talk about slow starts and that inability to get off the field or stay on the field on those early drives. Well, if the quarterback starts 0 for 5 on your opening script, it's tough to stay on the field. It's tough to maintain drives. It's tough to put points on the scoreboard. The Eagles still the only team in the NFL that have yet to register a point in the first quarter of a football game. And that's a big problem, obviously, if you want to try and get things going early on. And so I think when you talk about that inability to access the middle of the field, still very little middle of the field action from this passing game, only 2 throws off play action, the motion just not a big part. So that lack of easy button throws for Jalen Hurts, it's something that this offense is going to have to continue to fix. They have to get into the workshop, get into the lab. You would have thought that that's something that would have happened during the bye week, but still more of the same from this offense. And again, I think it's going to lead to the volatility that we've come to expect. A.J. Brown is going to make plays. He's a great player. DeVonta Smith, he's going to make plays. Jalen Hurts, he's going to make big plays with his arm and with his legs. Saquon Barkley, we know. Dallas Goedert, when healthy, he's going to make big plays. But if you're just leaning on that and not on as much of the scheme, it's gonna lead to some up and down play, both in the run game and in the pass game. And now let that transition to my next point here with the offense. And that's just this was the first time where we saw a pedestrian effort from the rushing attack. And I think this was multi-layered. There were a few things, and I'll get into it in my breakdown, whether it was the way that the defense lined up. We saw some 3-4 looks from Jim Schwartz with 3 defensive tackles and 2 defensive ends. Not all that dissimilar to what we saw Vic Fangio do against the New Orleans Saints a few weeks back, where he just loaded up the defensive front and forced some issues for the blocking schemes. We saw that from Jim Schwartz in this game against the Eagles. And so they loaded up the defensive front. The Eagles honestly had some issues blocking the nose tackle, Dalvin Tomlinson. They struggled making some backside blocks on the backside defensive tackle, Shelby Harris. So there was some poor execution up front. And then there were just some times where they just missed assignments. And so we'll get into that. And that led to some of the issues. The Saquon Barkley only just over 60 yards rushing in this game, didn't reach the end zone. So again, the first pedestrian effort from Saquon and the run game here in this one. And I'll dive into a lot of those plays. But those were the reasons there that I saw on the film. A lot to break down, a lot to chew on from this offensive performance. Now, you get over to the defensive side, only 9 points allowed. Really nice job there by the defense. You don't let them into the end zone. That's always a win. I thought we saw some really good things from the pass rush, 5 sacks. You only had 6 coming into the game through the first 4 games, so to get 5 here in week number 6, you like that from this rush. And it happened from a bunch of different players. I think 7 different guys contributed to sacks. So that's big for this Eagles defense. You saw Milton Williams, you saw Josh Sweat, Jalen Carter got a solo sack, Cooper DeJean. So you saw players from every level of the defense contributing, getting home to quarterback Deshaun Watson. So that was certainly good. And honestly, you saw some good stuff on the coverage end as well that led to some of those sacks. On third down especially, I thought that Vic Fangio had a really good plan. They saw some good double teams against Amari Cooper in some of those stages. So I think ultimately, good defensive game plan. You saw the guys running to the football, a lot of really good effort, but 5 sacks is certainly a good starting point for this rush. So I'll dive into some of that. We're looking at some of the metrics with Bryce Huff. He got on the board for the first time with a half sack in this game. How did he change some of the techniques that he was playing with in this matchup against the Browns? So a lot to look at there with the pressure. Then, to me, I think the next point is just some of the individual efforts. And we'll start with Cooper DeJean. He gets his first NFL start in the slot for Avonte Maddox. And I thought we saw some really good things from Cooper DeJean. Obviously, no splash plays, no big interceptions or PBUs down the field. It's not like Quinyon Mitchell in his first start against the Green Bay Packers back in week 1. But I do think we saw some really good things from Cooper DeJean in this game. So I'll break some of that down. It was both against the run game and in the pass game. Some good pass-offs, some miscommunication, some things to work on, certainly. But I thought we saw some good signs of life there from the Eagles secondary and from some of their young players. And to me, again, that would take me to my third point. I thought we saw some really good individual efforts. I thought Nolan Smith really stood out. He would be my next guy that I would point to. Early on in the game and late, we saw some great individual effort plays from Nolan Smith, both against the run, the screen, the pass. He got home for a sack in this one for against Deshaun Watson. So some really good things from Nolan Smith. I thought Jordan Davis did some good things one-on-one in this game. So I think you looked up and down the roster, some really good things to take away from the defense. Now, look, obviously the Cleveland Browns, they have not been a beacon of offensive success so far this NFL season, so you take the opponent into account, but you can only grade off of what you saw on film, and I thought the defense did some really good things. So those are my thoughts after watching the film. I'm going to go and start writing. Obviously, I'll be joining Bo Wolf and Zach Berman on Tuesday on the PHLY Eagles show. So make sure that you are subscribed right here to the PHLY YouTube channel. Make sure you are a diehard so you can go check out the articles that I'm about to write. So I'm going to get writing. We'll see you soon here on the PHLY Eagles show.
We all silly like the mayor.